Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin, and today on the show, we're talking to Doug Schnitzbahn about what he's uncovered about the outdoor community in 2025. But before we get to that, next week, we'll be back on Monday with outdoor industry insider Owen Comerford, as well as creative and brand expert producer Dave with our leading coverage of the outdoor industry. Next Tuesday, you're going to get an all-new episode of Open Container, hosted by the aforementioned Doug Schnitzbahn. Make sure you follow Open Container on your favorite podcast app. And lastly, hey, do you want some Rock Fight stickers? All you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a written review, send a screenshot of that review to myrockfight@gmail.com, and we'll send you a bunch of different Rock Fight stickers. In fact, if you do it for Open Container, we'll do that for you too. So send us your screenshots. We'll send you stickers. Thanks for your support. We love you guys, and stick around. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Rock Fight, Rock Fight, Rock Fight.
Today's episode of The Rock Fight is brought to you by Oboes, who wants to share their love of hiking, and we want to help them by uncovering all the different reasons that we love to take the long walk, including the following. Number one today, screaming into the void on mountaintops. It's more effective than screaming into the void, just generally speaking, so hiking can help get you there. Number two, trail magic, that's a real thing. It's not just hiker folklore. It isn't. Trail magic happens out there. I bet it's happening out there right now for Shante Salabert. Number three, because you just need a reason to use the words base layer in a conversation. Of course, if you work in the outdoor industry, that's probably not that hard for you to do, but you know what I'm saying. Number four, hiking means the Oboes Catabatic Collection featuring the Catabatic LT. The LT takes the Catabatic Collection to a whole new level with a lighter package, additional environmentally friendly materials. So from fast packing to day hiking, the Catabatic LT is your new shoe of choice. And if you're in the market for a pair of Catabatic LTs and you happen to be in one of 3 Louisiana locations, stop by the legendary Massey's Outfitters to pick up a pair. And this hiking appreciation moment is brought to you by Oboes of Bozeman, Montana. Oboes is the maker of premium quality footwear for the trail and the Cupid to the outdoor world. Oboes, love hiking. This is DJ CT, and welcome back to Rock Fight Radio, where today we're excited to share with you guessed it, the latest from Fitz. Here's a little taste of Fitz Like You, exclusively independent.
Out in a town with a name you don't know, past the highway signs and the mountain snow, there's a little shop with a wooden door, been keeping locals geared since '84. They sell grit, they sell gear that lasts, and a socket don't quit when you're moving fast. Fits on the shelf, fits for the bold, not some big box store. You've been sold. We're exclusively independent, yeah, we ride for the few, not the cheapest, just the realest. Knit tight for what you do, for the towns that keep the trails that drive, and the rebels keeping dreams alive. Fit stand tall in the shops that care. If you want it real, you'll find us there. Fit.
Check out all of the hits from Fitz on their Spotify playlist, and now, back to the show. All right, today's episode of The Rock Fight is presented by Lems Footwear. Learn more about Lems' range of versatile footwear featuring over 30 thoughtfully designed styles by heading to lemsshoes.com. And Doug Schnitzbahn is here. He's a journalist, a publisher, and he's, of course, the host of Open Container, the podcast here on the Rock Fight Podcast Network. What's happening, Doug?
Always good to be rock fighting.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Just slinging stones at people.
Breaking the occasional window and then running.
We were just talking about the Black Sabbath concert last weekend, the tribute concert, and I was telling you that I think Guns N' Roses needs to hang him up. By Axl continuing to sing, is he throwing rocks or is he taking his lumps?
Poor Bill Bailey, poor Axl. You know, I once heard Guns N' Roses described as the last gasp of the 80s, and that was kind of it. They were the most momentary band maybe of all time. Yeah, it's sad. It's sad what happens when you don't evolve, right? When you have to move on. I think we were talking about that, how I love what Robert Plant has done, where he's not kind of trying to go out there and, stick a sausage down his shorts and still screech doing Led Zeppelin songs badly. But, he's working with Alison Krauss. He's evolving. He's moving on. He's knowing where he's at. That's a cool way to be.
Guns N' Roses podcast coming next from Rock Fight. All right. This episode is scheduled to come out on Friday, July 11th, which means that Doug's podcast, Open Container, is pushing 6 months old. It's released 26 episodes. If you haven't checked out Open Container yet, first, you should. Second, the concept of the show is the stuff that Doug is curious about when it comes to the outdoor world. And he's interested in exploring the intersection of business, sport, conservation, culture, politics, all those things that pertain to the outdoors and how those things pertain to the outdoors. And to that end, he's had on guests like Greta Morgan, who's a musician, Cody Chamberlain, who's an artist, as well as business folks like our own Owen Comerford, Gigi from NARA. Just a great group of guests talking about stuff that affects outdoorsy people. And since I'm always looking, at exploring the outdoor condition here in the Rock Fight, I thought we'd look back on the first 26 episodes to get a temperature check of where the outdoor community sits halfway through 2025. And who's better to have, opinions on this than you at this point, Doug? I mean, you were already pretty entrenched in this beforehand, but 26 episodes in, I imagine you've learned a few more things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the whole idea of Open Container when we started out was having a broader net for the outdoor industry. Like we see, I think we talk about it, right? Like Hollywood's always they're still using the frame pack, right? For when people are outdoors, and that's 50 years outdated or something like that. So outdoors, and even I think we've talked about it with guests too, how, conservation, outdoor, all this stuff it's really pushed to the side as a niche. But I think what we've seen even post-COVID especially is that outdoors is part of the fabric of everybody's life. Everybody wants to get outdoors. 5 million people go to Zion, right? Anyone, if you want to break from work, if you want to break from screens, gets outside to a park or bikes or hikes or exercises. I think that everywhere from mountain towns to New York City, LA, which were the top outdoor towns that are outdoor draft winner, Shantae.
Fucking Shantae.
According to you folks, according to the listeners,
that's right.
The person who picked LA and New York as their top outdoor towns won. But I think that says something about the outdoor space, and that says something about what we want Open Container to really speak to, is that outdoors is not some little niche. It's really part of all of our lives, and with a rapidly shrinking planet, with ecological catastrophe facing us every day, it really should be a lot more of what we talk about.
We've said this repeatedly in various forms, but I think you just sort of surmised it for me the right way. I love, now it's funny thinking about people calling the outdoors or the outdoor industry a niche. Like, well, how can anything that's be worth at minimum billions of dollars be a niche? Number one, right?
Trillion,
if you include everything, right? So,
right?
And depending, even in the individual niche categories are still hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And then you're right, totally, like altogether over $1 trillion. Also, how can it be a niche if we know that chemically and biologically we all do better by going outside because that's our background, that's our lineage, that's where we came from? Like, there's all the science around what happens to your body when you're standing by a body of to your body when you're standing by a body of water, right? I mean, this isn't like made up stuff. And now the core might be like, it's like we are doing these really super crazy hardcore outdoor things. Good on you, and we know that you're pushing a lot of things forward. But ultimately, the day, like, it's not a niche. Like, we know that going outside is just good for you, and so it's kind of funny that we have to like justify how we talk about this stuff because we're so used to being inside now.
Yeah, we're not binary creatures, right? We're not made to, we're not made to just be in front of screens. We're not made to do this hell routine we have to do of overworking, of punching keyboards, of being within these weird structures. That's not really how this organism that we are functions, right? So outdoors is not, we got to this point, I think, where we were able, and I think that Ben Goldfarb and I talked a lot about this. We evolved to a point where we have dominion over nature, and we think that's normal, but really, it's not. It's not.
It's really not.
No.
It's really
not. And
it
affects us. It's why there's so much, there's so much depression and uncertainty, and people can't find grounding. You have to, as the saying goes, everyone likes to say, go touch grass, right? It's that simple.
Yeah. All right, well, we're kind of doing some of your learnings here before we get into the learning. So we broke it into the categories. We're going to talk about business, sport. We're going to talk about, I lost it there. Oh, culture and politics and policy. So let's start with business, since this is more of an industry kind of bent we have here on the Rock Fight. Who have you had on? Like, what have you been learning about sort of the business of the outdoors?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to talk about. And this is a place where we wanted to be really careful, right? Because, as you said, what we do here, Rock Fight, is, more the insidery business podcast. So I think with Open Container, I wanted to be careful when we talk about business to make sure it was really wide open that anyone would be interested in it, not just,
Sure.
Not just the inside audience. At the same time, a lot of knowledgeable people are coming over from Rockfight and listening to Open Container. So we also want to make sure that, we're getting info that'll appeal to anyone who is deep in the outdoor business. And one thing I think I've learned from years working in the outdoor industry and the outdoor business is that it's not like any other industry. And you would see that when people, at outdoor retailer or something, when people would come over from some other, industry or corporate world, they'd be like, I like this shit. Like, I want to be here.
Yeah.
You got Michael Franti playing in the aisle. You got people having beers. But more than that, you've got people who are in business for reasons beyond simply, looking at a spreadsheet, simply making money. There's real passion. And as usual, all of us would rather be playing than working most of the time anyway. So we're trying to find a way to be able to do both those things, trying to find a way to do good as well. So what do you want to talk about some of the guests we've had on and what we've learned from them?
So who are some of the guests and some of the things some of the learnings that you've taken away from some of those guests?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, one of the first people I wanted to have on, because he's always fascinated me in his approach, and I think is a cool guy, was Mike Carey and his daughter Donica. And Colin and I are both big football fans. And Mike obviously is one groundbreaking NFL ref. He was there for the helmet catch, source of despair for Colin and source of joy for me as a Giants fan. But so here's this guy who was in this very, he was a football player. He was one of the best refs the NFL's ever had. I'm pretty certain he was the first black referee to be a head referee in the Super Bowl. But I really wanted to get him on because I knew that the way he ran his brand, Cirrus Outdoor Gear, he's also a passionate skier, right? And the way he ran his brand was really informed by what he learned playing sports, being in the NFL. And he has this really amazing collaborative way to get everyone at Cirrus to work together. And that was great to see. And it seems very indicative of outdoor snow sports kind of world. And his daughter is also equally great and brings in a kind of fresh perspective. And it's always great to see when a family business can work together, where she kind of went out and did her own thing and loves playing in the outdoors, but then, came back to the brand that was in her living room when she grew up.
So it was Cirrus is they're a pretty established brand. I wouldn't say they're the most recognizable brand in the industry when you're up against such like big names like like TNF or Patagonia, whatever. But you go to an outdoor shop, there's a good chance they're gonna have accessories from Cirrus on the shelves. They've been around for a long time. Mike was the founder of it, but then you've also had some small folks on as well, right? You had Gigi from NARA on. We talked with a lot of love around what NARA's doing here on the Rock Fight. So what was that conversation like talking to Gigi?
Yeah, having Gigi on was really great because she really excites me with her kind of passion and dedication to what she's doing. And, as you know, Nara was originally She Fly. And as I always say, one of the great things about the outdoor industry is innovation. You continue to see innovation because people are making products to fix a need that they see out in the field. And I think that, that's one of the things I miss the most about the big trade shows being gone. I think we're seeing a little more of it now with Switchback and even at Grassroots Connect. It's really important to see these small brands with an idea that responds to a need. And I love how Gigi did that. She was she the only, I think, in a team of guides in Alaska, female guide or guide with female body parts, and was annoyed with how hard it was to pee, which makes a lot of freaking sense. And it's shocking to know that no one had really responded to that need. So she founded a business that is not just doing that, but also I think, doing what any good brand needs to do and creating a good ethos and great style and that young energy and passion that she brings to her work is just amazing.
You covered the industry in the past. You wrote for Snooze back in the day. You've been doing gear reviews for a long time. All those things. You've been in the kind of culture of the industry as well as the community. When you sort of hear from a more established brand like Cirrus, And then you followed up with a conversation like with what Gigi's trying to do, which she has a totally like duh kind of product, like why hasn't this existed before kind of product, but it's also still like it's early days for them. Like, the future is yet to be written for where what happens with that brand. What does it tell you about what's happening in the industry?
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, I think that innovation still matters. Right? I mean, I think it's really hard to know anything of what's going on in the industry right now because we're in such chaos and whiplash. But I do think that
that's true.
I do think that big brands obviously can absorb a lot of the hard hits, but I believe economies are like water, that they'll kind of swell up and flow wherever they need to go. And I think that small innovators, people coming up with new ideas and people able to work at small scale, and Gigi herself said this, they're pretty nimble, right? So they can react to stuff quickly. So I think in a way we might see more small brands pop up, more small new ideas in this time period. I like to say my daughter's into this idea of goth gorp, right? Bringing some kind of like goth girl style to outdoor stuff. And she works at the Arc'teryx store here in Boulder and brings that out. But I think there's a lot of room for these just new, small, fun ideas, obviously, as well as hyper local ideas too. And then a brand like Sirius, I mean, I think they're doing well because, they're focused. I think anytime you're focused on innovation and, fulfilling a need, you should do well in an economy. And their teamwork ethics is so good too.
So you also had our guy Owen Comerford on. Is it nepotism to talk about Owen, being on your show too?
I mean, is it nepotism having me on this show doing this right now? Right? That's right. People are listening like, what is this? What is this bullshit? Like, this is like, is this like a clip reel, dude? This is like the clip reel show.
This is the Remember When episode, the mid-season episode of the sitcom.
There's only one bad episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and it is the clip reel episode. Have you ever seen this?
Clip reel where they're looking back.
Oh my God, it's freaking horrible. Like Riker.
Remember how disappointed you were back in the day when you didn't know what was coming because like TV was regular. You didn't know what was going to be on every week, and then you're like, I got to wait a whole another week for a new episode because this is a bullshit like look back.
Right. So let's not make this a clip reel. Let's like try to bring something good in here, right?
Yeah. All right, Owen was good. We can move on.
No, Owen was great, and I think when Owen, I was glad to, Owen is, such a professional and done this so well. I was glad to kind of push into Owen a little more and really kind of figure out more what makes him tick. One of the great things, it's always great to get response when you put your stuff out there, right? And usually, I mean. Having worked in media and stuff, I know most of the response, the people who really want to speak up don't have good things to say. But it was great to see some positive response after Owen was on. Bill Byrne of Remedy PR reposted a quote he said, which was, if I cover up the brand, can you tell who made it? As a really great piece of insight coming from Owen as a former CEO of retail, as a former buyer. And I thought that was a great thing for Bill to notice and a great thing for Owen to say. And a really great thing to think about is you really do have to, stand out and have a brand that grabs people, right?
Yeah. That's the reality of the whole sameness we talk about, right? And so if you then that's a not to take a shot at Stio, but like I think about like I walked into a Stio store and it's kind of the first thing I thought is like, who is this? This looks like it could be any outdoor brand. And they make really quality good stuff, but it is like, what's the thing that makes them different? And I'm sure if someone from their company wanted to call me, they'd kind of walk me through what it is. But like, I just remember having that same kind of feeling of like, I'm not sure who you guys are, like what it is about you I'm supposed to take away. So I think that's a really important, and it's a distinction in terms of how you're going to grow. So, all right, enough about Owen. Let's move on to sport.
Dude,
I'm
wearing a Stio shirt.
Hey, so there you go. It's the Schnitzbahn line from Stio. Is that one? Sorry, Steve. I'm not trying to like rip you down, but just saying, like there's a lot of stuff that looks the same in the industry. So being able to be distinct is important. But all right, moving on to sport. What did you have? Who did you have on that you consider like more in the sport category?
I mean, we had an Olympic champion on, right? We had not just an Olympic champion, an Olympic pioneer in Billy DeMong, which I was really excited to have him on. And I was so surprised by how approachable and fun and really cool he was. Billy DeMong, was the first, we better double check this, but I think he was the first American to win a Nordic medal.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's
Gold
what he said.
medal, yeah, in Nordic combined, which is a wacky sport anyway, where you're ski jumping and then Nordic racing, right? And he
Yeah.
loved the wackiness of it, and it was really a treat to be able to talk to him. And what did we learn from him? First, I learned to, I love talking to him because I was a competitive athlete in high school, and I think that I was a super competitive athlete, and it burned me out when I did it, because all I ended up doing, was a runner. I was in track. 800 meters was my big event, and eventually, all I ended up was doing was running just to compete, just to win, and miss doing stuff I loved doing. I loved, basketball, baseball. I missed out on a lot of that because it was so competitive. And now I'm like, I can't compete because if I compete, I have to win. And if I don't train, I'm not going to win. If I'm not there, I have to win. And then I talked to this guy who was a gold medalist, and he was like, fuck that. Just go have fun. Just go do it. And he told us, what did he told us he competed in some, small race or something. I think it was a crit, right? It was a bike race. And like, he came in last and he didn't care. And I was like, well, thank you, Billy. I think I'm going to go compete, just have fun in something now.
Doug's going to enter his 5K age of his life. He's going to start just ripping off 5Ks. Actually, it's why we hired you here to do Open Container, because we wanted you to win at podcasting. We knew you were wired that way.
I am wired that way. Like, I am wired that way. I do want to win in podcasting, so please sign up, and 5-star ratings only. That's right. I look at my ratings every day,
unfollow
being
all
like,
the other podcasts.
Where are the ratings? Give me the ratings. Come on, let's win. Let's beat. Let's beat everyone. Unfortunately, I'm very competitive. People might not know that. Yeah,
it's funny though to talk about sport and athletes, because I mean that's actually a category in outdoor podcasts that I have the least time for, because it feels like just if you listen to most outdoor athletes on a podcast, it's largely uninteresting, and you can almost predict the story because you get and part of that's the kind of the host and the show's fault as well, because they don't really establish an interesting premise or why this person's on, other than they're just a notable name in sport. So let's have them on. And I thought that was sort of the interesting thing about Billy coming on. Because I was wondering, like, okay, he's an athlete, he won a gold medal, that's cool. But it was the stuff that you guys dug into like that, about like, hey, no, it's just like, here's what I'm doing now in my life after the Olympics. If we just sat and swapped the Olympic stories for an hour, maybe that's not that interesting, right? But the fact is, you got to that place where you were not expecting to walk away from that conversation going, hey, maybe I should go do a trail running race. Like you weren't thinking
not
that
at all.
heading into that
Exactly. Yeah, I haven't entered one yet, but I will, Billy. I promise.
Yeah. Well, you have to now.
I don't know, archery or something. I say that about yoga too,
cool.
like especially in Boulder. Like sometimes you see people doing yoga, you're like, dude, there's no winning in yoga. You can't win yoga. That's why it's a good thing to do. Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say one more thing about Billy, though, and what he had to say that was great was when he talked about the reason why they were able to create an Olympic program that won was that they stopped trying to do it like the way the Norwegians were or the way someone else was, and they really embraced like this unique way of them doing it as the American team. And I think that, I think the great thing about sports, you and I could do a sports podcast, right? Like I always love sports analogies, but I think that you can really learn how to approach the rest of your life from sports. And that was a great life lesson that he had really is you've got to just do it your own way. You got to not try to copy, and that's the key to building your success is being you, which sounds super cliched and obvious, but you got to remind yourself of those things often too.
All right. So I think probably the topic where you've had maybe the most interesting conversations has been around conservation. And that's not because we set out to do it that way, but just because of what's been happening in the world. It sort of has ended up that way, that it's like, public lands has become a kind of a featured thing the last few months for all of us. And so that has led to a lot of really interesting conservation conversations you had. What's happened on the conservation front on Open Container?
Yeah, it has been interesting. And I think part of it was we didn't, we want this podcast to be pretty broad. We didn't want it just to be reporting on conservation news all the time. But on the other hand, with the assault we are all of a sudden seeing on things we care about, selling off public lands, defunding national parks, firing the people who, take care of and manage public lands, getting rid of firefighters. When we're seeing this assault, all of a sudden, I feel like we have a duty. There's nothing else we can do but speak up and have guests on.
And we have a platform, so we have to use our voices for sure.
Yeah. And we've had so many great guests on, Drew Simmons, Rochelle Schrute. Recently, I talked to Ben Goldfarb, who has an incredible book about beavers.
Bonkers conversation. Just bonkers conversation.
Yeah, we talked about being tricked into drinking the juice from a beaver's anal gland, which you'll have to listen to the podcast to get the details on that.
That's so gross.
But yeah, I mean, conservation, I think conservation is the bedrock for all of us, right? And that's what we saw. Yeah. That's what we saw with the public land sell-off, that I think that, Mike Lee was a Republican senator who had some underhanded motives going into these sell-offs. And he's been so used to being in a red state and just having Republican, conservative, a certain demographic support him. But we found out that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, even libertarians. People love their public lands. People really love their public lands. It's the bedrock of who you are. If you like to skid stuff up on an ATV, if you like to, backpack and complete silence and wilderness, there's this bedrock where we all unite. And that was really great to see.
Yeah, if anyone listening to this is not following Rochelle Schrute, you should. I mean, she's been on the Rock Fight and she's been on Open Container, and she is a big voice in the the hunt and fish community. She writes for Gear Junkie as their hunt and fish editor. So a lot of the stuff that she covers, she lives in rural Montana. I mean, she definitely fits into a specific archetype for a lot of things. But I think, it was really fun getting to know her by having her on both pods, and then just watching her just lay waste to the people who were coming after public lands on social media, and just giving zero fucks while doing it.
Dude,
unfollow me, yell at me all you want. This is 100% wrong, and I am going to tell you that it is, and that's what's up. It was great.
She is my hero. She is such a freaking. And she wouldn't care that I said that. That's the great thing about it. She has grown up in a small town, Montana.
She'd probably be like, why?
Yeah, she's grown up, she's grown up when it's been hard to put food on the table from her parents for her. She's had a hard time feeding her kids. She's had to hunt for that. She's dealt with misogyny. She's dealt with bullshit, and she is not going to freaking take it. And I think she's great. And when this stuff came up, I was all like, oh, I don't know what to do. And she fucking knew what to do. She basically, she called out Mike Lee. I don't think she used any bad words because she's a good Montana girl, but man, she took it to him, and she was part of, she was a spearhead for the whole hunting and fishing industry that I think they thought they had in their pocket. And that don't piss off the hunters. They came after this stuff so hard and so bad because these are people who love public land, love conservation, and they know what it's like to run into a no trespassing or keep out sign on private land.
So the other side of the conservation is the other thing we're going to talk about, which is policy and politics. But we'll get to that in a second. Before we continue that part of it, culture was next, right? And so I think culture is an operative word, right, in the description of Open Container, right? It's like, the culture of the outdoors, kind of like going a little deeper than just talking about an athlete or just talking about gear or these kinds of things, right? Culture was sort of an important word, I feel like, in the sort of brief of what became Open Container. So how has that played out in the first 26 episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously every episode is a culture episode in some way, right? And I think that's what important. We call it Open Container. Outdoor culture is a free-flowing conversation, right, is the tagline that I think I can't claim credit for. I think that was producer Dave who came up with that.
Producer Dave getting some love. Not here. Notice he's not here. You and I are often alone a lot lately. Let's call out Producer Dave right now.
Producer Dave
When's the last time Producer Dave came to an Open Container meeting?
He just shows up and drops his little bombs. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, for culture, I think we've got a lot of guests on too. And these are the guests I really want to have on to show in some ways that outdoors isn't just a niche, that it's a big part of the fabric of everything.
Right.
One of the first people I really wanted to have on when we started doing this was a musician, Greta Morgan, who I had interviewed, for Elevation Outdoors, and was just captivated by her story, by her intelligence, by her sensitivity. And Greta Morgan, was a musician. She was Springtime Carnivore, opening up for Jenny Lewis. She was traveling around the world, playing huge venues in the traveling band for Vampire Weekend. And then over COVID, she got COVID. She had mold in her house. And then she ended up with spasmodic dysphonia, where she lost the high end of her voice, lost her identity in a way, what made her be as a musician. And it's really could be a horribly tragic story, but
Yeah.
what's so amazing about Greta is she's made it a triumphant story. And one of the big parts of her healing, of her coming to terms with this, was spending time in Zion National Park and in the desert and finding healing out there, making instrumental music, and kind of redetermining what voice is and what identity is from her time in the desert, which I just found beautiful and important for all of us to know and see.
It's the ultimate kind of outdoor story. It's the outdoor stories I feel like you and I grew up on. It's the things where these are the kind of story, Greta's story of this sort of problem that she had, and then finding some healing or solve or whatever, however you want to describe it, in the outdoors is the kind of stuff we used to get from outside and like hooked on the outdoors and like these magazines that we all loved like 20, 30 years ago, because it didn't have to be about scaling a mountain or setting up FKT or any of this stuff, it can be interesting depending on who's doing it. But this was, here is the outdoors playing an integral role in the healing of an individual, right? And it's like, and that is that's a takeaway that we can all take away regardless of what our personal interests are. And that's why I think Greta's story, from the outdoorsy perspective, is fascinating and important. And by the way, even if the outdoors played less of a role, it's still an interesting story because of what she's had to deal with. Think about your livelihood, your career, all of your passions being tied up in your voice. And then one day you wake up and your voice doesn't work anymore. Like that's a crazy scenario to kind of find yourself in. The fact that she was able to help find her way through that challenge because of the outdoors, or at least in part of the outdoors, that's just even more fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's the basic. I think you're right. We've got we've got the sports side of the outdoors is great, but I mean, what is it that Thoreau said? I went to the woods to live deliberately, right? And that's what we can all do, and that's what we all need right now, and that can bring us, focus. It can bring us healing. It just brings us a better sense of who we are in our brief time in life.
We also had a polar explorer, Eric Larson, on, very well known in the outdoor community, been kind of a notable figure in our space for quite some time. But you guys had a really pretty personal conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we both started crying during the conversation, because Eric has gotten through colon cancer, and I've sort of gotten through lymphoma about the same time, and I think we could have talked about Eric in sport, but I think that really the place to talk about what we discussed is here in culture, because it's the outdoors helping us heal, helping us see what living is when really faced with mortality. Because I've faced mortality. I've almost fallen and died. I've done dumb shit. I've had bike crashes. I've had those quick accident looks at mortality, or like, wow, I could have died here, or something like that. Things happen for sure, but it's a different way you look at mortality when you're facing cancer. It's more long-term, and it's more infused in who you are and what you see, and in the way you then start to experience the outdoors and your connection with people.
Well, it's more representative of what we're all the human condition, right? I mean, something like cancer is going to affect however many of us, versus those kind of fleeting moments of bad decision making that you kind of walk away from going like, oh, that was a boneheaded decision. I shouldn't have done that. And then maybe you learn from that and you don't do that specific thing again. But what you and Eric, and here listening to you talk, kind of both went through, and the perspective you can share, and the things you don't know when when your number is going to be called. But here it is kind of facing you. And not only are you going to have to face this down, it isn't going to be over in a second, like surviving a bike fall or, a whipper on a cliff or something like that. This is going to take a while, and it's going to be terrible along the way. And hopefully at the end of it, it'll be okay. Right. That's a tough spot to be.
Yeah. And I think one of the things Eric said in our conversation that's really important, resonated with me too. It's not just the outdoors and being out there. When we talk about the outdoors, it's the outdoor community as well. And, it was a beautiful thing. He told me how Kristen Hostetter, who you had the Rock Fight recently, and I've worked with for a long time, how she would come and pick him up when he's in Boston and take care of him and checked in on him all the time. And I was like, I sent her a message afterwards, almost in tears, being like, Kristen, that's beautiful that you did that for no other reason, than to be in the community. For me too, Teresa Baker, who I had on the show, would send me, I know, I've worked with her and know her, but when I was going through chemo, she was sending me texts all the time, checking in, and you're like, wow, that matters. And I think Eric got into that too. He was like, this polar exploration, this stuff seems fucking stupid now. But finding this acceptance with people who want to help and the people who are there for you is really, really powerful. And that's what the outdoors does too, is it creates this incredible community that reaches out over business, over politics, and over health, mortality.
All right, last one. And again, this is kind of the other side of the coin, not the other side of the coin. The partner to the conservation conversation is the politics and policy part of it. Because again, this definitely became a little more dominant in public lands than maybe we anticipated when we were conceiving of the show. But what better time for you to have this platform than the last few months? And I'm sure this will continue as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, I think we really do well as an industry, and we continue to do well. And I think we really saw that. I had Jessica Turner on recently from Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, and she was really influential in pushing to fight this public land sell-off. And she was one of the few people who was really in a position to be able to do that because she has built relationships on both sides of the aisle. And she helped make a difference, And I think she... we're here to talk about like what I learned from these things.
Yeah.
And from what I learned from her is that, she really has a commitment to uniting people, right? To working together, to really working towards the solutions, right? The public land sell-offs were bad, but she brought up the point that there are these other, small, maybe a couple of acres or 10 acres or something, public land sales that do happen all the time and might need to happen to help the common sense realities of small rural communities. And I think we always have to be thinking about that when we push for conservation, for public lands, for everything. We have to be thinking about all the people who are being affected, and finding some kind of people hate to hear this, right? But inclusivity and equity, on all sides is really important. It's democratic, right? So if we want to find democratic ways to manage the outdoors, that means we have to look at compromise and look at everyone's needs and find policy that works together. I mean, the problem is our current administration just says, I'm going to give a finger to everyone and thinks that's a way to run a democracy, which it's not. And I think they found that out with the pushback against public land sales.
Yeah, you've talked about it, maybe even on this show, but definitely on Open Container, about how there was a time when I'm like, because we were talking about it so much, I'm like, should we just pivot and be a public lands podcast? Yeah. And I'm glad that we decided that you said, no, I don't want to do that, because who knows what the topics are going to be in the future, where we'll want to go deeper on those over maybe a series of weeks as well. So that the flexibility is important. But it has come to define 2025, aside, tariffs and public lands. I mean, we're in July. I don't know what else could be added to the mix, but those would be the two things that we talk about the most in the outdoor industry and community, probably through the end of the year, as well as, again, something else gets thrown our way. But I do think of we titled the Caroline Gleick episode, "They're Fixing to Steal Your Land." And it's like, that's something I remember you referenced that was an older article where you first saw that. And that's been a phrase I feel like it's been around for a long time, but it does feel like we have arrived at the moment where all the sort of grandstanding or maybe overreacting to things, like you can't say that's what it is anymore, because it's actually happening now. And so to have these voices on and to have the voices you've been able to feature on the show, and kind of help further that into the zeitgeist here in the outdoor zeitgeist, I think it's just really important.
Yeah, because we have to come together as we have to show that we're a community, right? And have to come together as a community, which we are. And that community includes a whole lot of people,
right?
As we've mentioned before. And that's the way to create solutions, because, politics, people get on both sides, frankly, get wrapped up in their politics and want to just use ideology to solve problems. Ideology doesn't solve problems at all. People getting together. What did Teresa Baker say on the podcast? Make a longer table, right? People coming together and talking and working, and sometimes having to give stuff up, sometimes, not. I mean, that's how things get done. And that's the way things need to get done. Outdoor spaces are facing a lot of pressure, and that pressure is just going to continue. The pressure for resources, the pressure for places to get away, the pressure to live, right? So it's really, really important now that we plan well and take care of these resources. I think that is one thing I learned too. I found out that in, what was it, the late 50s, early 60s, I think Eisenhower started it, and then it was during the Kennedy administration. There was a recreation advisory group the federal government got together that was looking at recreation up to the year 2000, thinking about what these resources were going to look like moving forward, how they could be best managed, how people could enjoy them. And I mean, that's the kind of work we need to be doing now. Mm-hmm. Whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, you really need to be working on solutions for these things instead of seeing who can scream the loudest about ideology.
Well, and it's also why the notes coming out of the OIA about participation increasing, and even if it's casual participation, whatever it is, that's important. Because if you don't understand what you really have in your public lands, and maybe you've driven through the West at some point, it just seems like a whole lot of emptiness and nothing. And then someone's like, hey, we could sell that off and solve problems X, Y, and Z. It's not a hard argument to make to certain people. And if we don't, to your point about equity and inclusion, if we don't get more people they don't have to go up and freaking stand on the top of 20,000-foot mountains, but at least understand the value of what having this open space and these public places do for humanity, then, we need, it has to happen. To your point about Teresa, we need that bigger table. Well, we actually know what we need is the table that was in episode 7 of season 4 of The Bear. Because that table went on forever.
I love The Bear.
I love The Bear too. Makes me cry at least 3 times a season.
That's right. It did make me cry, I admit, yes. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And think about it, right? Like I said, 5 million people going to Zion National Park. What's the population of Utah? Like just over 3 million, right? And what we're doing, we have policymakers now who are pretending it. What are they pretending it's not happening? Let's take the restaurant analogy, right? What if you had a restaurant that had lines out the door every day that was packed, that people all wanted to go to, people had to go to, and then your idea was, let's lay off half the staff, let's cut down our hours, and let's, cut the menu down to 2 items.
Right?
That's the worst thing you could absolutely do, right? We have
or the gatekeeping outdoorsy people who get mad when Yosemite is really busy. It's like, well, shouldn't you want people to show up and see Yosemite, right? And now it makes it worse when then resources are cut and we can't staff it appropriately and have the whatever. But it's also that I don't want to hear that anymore. I don't want to hear that you're mad that some place is overrun with tourists and they're dirty. It's because they don't know any better. But guess what they did? They took the initiative to come see it, right? And who knows how they'll be changed by taking that initiative. You have to approach it that way.
You have to manage it. You have to look at reality. This is the reality. There's millions of people coming to national parks and public lands.
Right, because they're spectacular.
Just because you don't want them to, or your ideology doesn't say so, or you think it's some liberal idea, you're not going to, you're going to get the reality of millions of pissed off people this summer.
Yep.
Don't piss people off. Don't piss hunters off.
All right. So that's a lot actually of learnings for a 6-month-old podcast. So what's next? Any summary, any big summary on doing the show and kind of how you want to see it progress and the kind of folks you want to have on?
Yeah, I mean, I want it to continue to reach more people, right? That's the only reason you do anything is to, it's the reason you write, it's the reason you broadcast, is you want to reach people and you want to help other people reach people, right? So I think moving forward, it will continue to use that bedrock of outdoor culture being the main driving principle that gets people on, but we will still cover policy, politics, sports, business. We'll get all that in there. And I just want people to listen to it and enjoy it and walk away with some kind of learning of their own.
Right on, man. Well, we love having it being part of the network here, and you're gonna have a partner soon. We have a third podcast hopefully launching in the next month or so. That'll be fun too. So stay tuned, everybody, to Rock Fight stuff. Doug, thanks for coming on, man. Good to see you as always.
This is awesome. Thanks, Colin.
And like we told you, this episode of The Rock Fight is presented by Lems. Are you looking for shoes that offer both long-lasting durability and all-day comfort? Look no further than Lems. With a versatile lineup that features over 30 thoughtfully designed styles, from minimalist sandals and rugged trail boots to vegan-friendly sneakers, don't eat them, and laid-back slip-ons, there's truly something for everyone. Whether you're hitting the trail, traveling the globe, or just, strolling through town, Lems are built to move with you naturally and keep up every step of the way. It'd be kind of weird if your shoes didn't keep up with you, but Lems definitely will. So get shopping over at lemsshoes.com.
It's time for a party shot.
All right, we have 2 parting shots today. First up, next week, I will be in Denver to attend the summer edition of the twice annual Outdoor Market Alliance media event. Actually, Doug will be there too. I think after last February's edition, Doug and I came on The Rock Fight to give our thoughts about the event. It's an event that we both quite like. And for those who may not be familiar, the OMA media event is a 2-day gathering at the Outdoor Market Alliance, which is a place where some of the best sales agencies in the Rockies have a permanent showroom. And for this event, those reps depart, and they let the PR agencies that represent the brands that are there set up to meet with members of the media. So it's sort of like a trade show for media folks. The brands that are there represent probably around 85% of the open to buy in the outdoor industry. And in the weeks after, you'll see other folks publishing gear reviews and previews. Some of our most notable interviews here on The Rock Fight came out of attending OMA. Neil Fisk from Black Diamond is one, and most recently, John Graydon from Marmot came on because we met at this event. And heading into the summer's edition of the event had me thinking about when Doug was on the show a couple of months ago and we talked about the state of outdoor media, how things feel pretty stagnant out there. So, I want to say that next week while I'm at this event, I'm planning on talking to the folks from the PR agencies who, when we're meeting to get their point of view as representatives working on the front line of media and in the outdoors to see what's missing and what needs to evolve. Hopefully some of them will do it live while I'll record their conversations and you'll hear some of their voices here on The Rock Fight. We'll see. So I'm planning on having those conversations. So that's coming up. And then lastly, my real parting shot, guys, Superman is back in movie theaters. James Gunn's move to DC really kicks off with the release of Superman yesterday, because this comes out on Friday. And it's a character I've never been a huge fan of, but I'm really excited to see this movie. I'm heading to see it in IMAX with my kids the day I'm recording this, on Thursday. So for today's parting shot, I'm going to make a prediction that not only will Superman be the biggest and best superhero movie of the year, I think we'll look back on this film as the moment when DC passes Marvel in the race for superhero movie dominance. Now, to be clear, I'm very excited for Fantastic Four, and I've always been a Marvel over DC guy. I do not like the DC characters as much as I like the Marvel characters. But James Gunn simply gets the tone and balance of these types of movies, and most importantly, he understands the heart of them as well. Now, I still think Marvel is poised to come back in a big way. I believe they're back on track. But I also think it will be impossible for them to reach the heights that we got to with Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, which will always be a bar that they want to clear and other people expect them to clear, but they will probably be unable to, which will clear the path for DC. And with James Gunn at the helm, I think they can do it. Of course, if the movie sucks, then I'll go back and delete this parting shot forever. That's why we did 2 of them today. Just kidding. All right, that's the show. We want your emails. Send them to myrockfight@gmail.com. The Rock Fight's a production of Rockfight LLC. For Doug Schnitzbahn, I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. Here he is, just counting the days until Less Than Jake is in San Diego. It's Krista Makes. He's going to sing the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock